It's story time telling. A Terrestrial Creature, I Came to Be. Back in 1969, Father departed from Italy to travel around Europe. He was a young, handsome man with olive skin, brown, piercing eyes, and a whole lot of dark hair. Mother was a blonde bombshell with high cheekbones and long legs that lasted forever. At a local cafe, they fell in love, which led to a passion ovation in the midst of the night. In those days, being pregnant and out of wedlock was unacceptable by society's moral standards. With few resources available for women who wanted to raise their child on their own, except leaving the child for adoption. Therefore, Mother complied with marital status, even though deep down it was not really what she wanted. But 9 months later, I came to be. Wednesday, the 22nd of April, 1970. In a cozy European city surrounded by canals, hemmed with giant friendly people, that place was and is still called Amsterdam. All was still that morning, but not for long. A young woman in her early 20s named Liene, who lived on the second floor in a flat, inhaled the fresh morning air from her living room window. Down below, she watched people bicycling in a hurry, probably going to work, while chattering munchkins clutched to their mother's hands, eager to start a new day at the kindergarten. To the far left, an array of tables and parasols covered the main square, where employees were setting up for lunch with blue-green tablecloths, waving its outskirts in the slender breeze, bringing forth the smell of spice and honey from the orange and yellow tulips, delicately placed in vases on the tabletops. Inhaling some more of the morning fresh air, Betty smiled to herself from the surrounding below. The blissful image brought to an end by hyperactive teens sadistically kicking garbage cans near the curb. The garbage cans clanked some more, in which inaugurated a punch in Betsy's chest, moving towards an unbearable pain in her abdomen, followed by a sensation of wetness between her legs. Betsy looked down as the liquid trickled on her inner thighs, making its way to the floor. Perplexed, she stared at the floor, where a puddle of her amniotic fluid lied. Ambrosio Maurizio, her husband, with shaving cream on his face, appeared a few seconds later in the living room, wondering what the heck was going on with his wife. Her knees jointed together unconsciously, hoping it would stop the flow, but her frightened grayish-blue eyes was creeping him out. Ambrosio pretended as if nothing was wrong, even though a puddle of fluid rested beneath his wife. Betty perceived his fear, ramping like a slithering serpent, leaving behind his freedom. Although his courage returned to him swiftly as he wiped the shaving cream off his face, threw on a shirt, retrieved his wife's compact orange leather suitcase, placed a jacket on her shoulders, grabbed her trembling hands. "Let's go, Betsy," he told her, and without looking at her, he pulled her down the rickety old staircase out the main lobby door. Barely reaching the sidewalk, Ambrosio whistled for a cab. From the other side of the road, a snazzy Austin cabbie U-turned for them, landing on the curb, reaching the young couple. An ebony, friendly face rolled down his window from the right side of his vehicle. "Hey, man, where to?" asked the cabbie with a cigarette dangling from his lips. My wife! We have to go to the second house!" Parentese Hospital, Ambrosio shouted. The ebony-friendly face helped Betty into the back seat and flung the suitcase in the boot of the vehicle, while Ambrosio reached the other side of the cab and hopped in. The eccentric style of the driver's huge afro blocked Ambrosio's central view. It made Betty laugh, forgetting in that moment that she was in labor. Godverdomme, Ambrosio swearing in Dutch, waving his arms in the air with spaced-out eyes. A terrestrial creature will be arriving soon, he shouted again. The cab driver, now freaked out, pulls into the fourth on the clutch, screeching tires as he zipped through the narrow streets of Amsterdam, while music blared from his radio. Foxy lady, I'm gonna getcha. Arriving at the San Antonio Ziekenhuis, Parentese Hospital, Ambrosio ran through the emergency doors shouting, my wife, help, she's having a terrestrial creature. A freckled-faced orderly came in with a wheelchair at Betty's rescue. Betty plopped down on the wheelchair and stared at her husband. She felt Ambrosio's serpent, changing forms as a stunning, raging dragon coming to get her. The freckled-faced orderly dashed through the hospital corridors, bypassing a swirl of moaning patients. Busy nurses and orderlies walking in and out of patients' room, within a few doctors focusing on their charts. Ambrosio ran behind them with Betty's orange leather suitcase in hand. Not far behind, his dragon followed suit. Finally, in the maternity unit, Betty rested on her hospital bed. Everything was crisp and clean, yet a gloomy sensation lingered in this place of blankness. At the entrance, a crucifix hung above the door, with a Jesus nailed to its cross. It had a bloody silhouette, and his face appeared in agony. It reminded Ambrosio of his extremely religious father, who repeatedly told the story of when he fought in World War I against the Germans and Austro-Hungarians. As the story goes, Nonno Maurizio was fighting in the front line near the Ansonso River. Nonno knelt in the trenches trying to fire at the enemy when all of a sudden a cannonball shot only inches from his head, leaving him alive but death. Fixated by the crucifix, Ambrosio murmured to his wife while he held her hand, "What a creepy room." Betty rolled her eyes at her husband. "It fucking hurts," she murmured back. Ambrosio stared at his wife, dumbstruck. He had never heard her that way. He held on to Betty's hand, thinking to himself, "I wish she wouldn't have gotten pregnant in the first place." He glanced at the open door. Out in the corridor, a whale woman wobbled by. The Earth's rotation seemed to slow down, for the clock ticked, but the hours were not passing fast enough. 12 hours had passed. Betty, exhausted, wondered if the baby would ever come out, or was this a torturous game that God had struck on her for all her mischievous behavior in her teenage years. On her hospital bed, not wanting to deal with her husband's ignoble, incongruous stare, she glanced towards the window near her. Daylight had vanished, and the region of the atmosphere was pitch black. Betty sensed something brewing in the night sky as a thunder cracked from afar. The sound became more sharp as the minutes passed, and all of a sudden, lightning struck near the window of Betty's hospital bed. It startled the bejeebers out of Ambrosio. "It's a guardian angel," Betty told her husband. Rain tacks hurled from the sky, tapping against the roof of the San Antonio Ziekenhuis, before Ambrosio could respond by yelling back at his wife. Betty started screaming profanities at her husband as he watched his wife's beautiful visage turn ugly, and with full force she bit her husband's hand. Ambrosio felt the rush again thumping in his right hand. This is a nightmare. When is this going to end? He shouted. Betsy's head now started bobbing around as if the demon entered her body to possess her. Please help my wife! Help my wife! Ambrosio terrified, shouting. Entering the room, a tall chestnut-haired nurse with a tight bun strapped on her head. Sweetheart, can I take a look? It might. Yes. Betsy breathed heavily. You're 4 inches dilated. The baby is coming. I'll get Dr. Klaus. Few minutes later, the doc appeared like Houdini wearing checkered bell-bottom pants flopping out of his snowy lab coat, with his smile radiating from his roundish, blemishing rosy cheeks. The tall chestnut-haired in a bun nurse entered swiftly with a clanking stainless steel tray on wheels. Dr. Klaus nodded at the tall chestnut-haired in a bun nurse and smiled back at the parents-to-be, all the while introducing himself. Hello, Miss Ewing. I'm Dr. Klaus, and this is Nurse Olga. Isn't she wearing the most brightest nursing outfit you have ever seen? Dr. Klaus winked, lowering his voice. I love her matching cap and shoes, don't you? Ambrosio watched Nurse Olga neatly rolling out 2 sterilized medical care packages on the stainless steel tray without touching the insides. In the meantime, Dr. Klaus intricately weaved his body into a blue gown, which seemed like a stray jacket. Although he had surpassed Houdini's trick, instead of getting himself out, he was weaving himself in his blue gown. Now the crisp and clean room seemed overcrowded. The chief in command, Dr. Klaus, snapped his polyester gloves as he stood in front of Betsy's private area, with her feet stretched afar lying on altars. Ambrosio stood up to leave, but Nurse Olga patted him on his shoulder and gave him a surgical mask. Ambrosio frowned and sat back down. Dr. Klaus commanded the berth. Push, my darling, push! Betsy peered at her commander and laughed as she realized her doctor had the goofiest look she had ever seen. Betsy, it's no time to laugh. Push, godverdomme! Ambrosio shouted, annoyed. Suddenly, a thought came across Betsy's mind, seeing herself in such a provocative way. Legs spread apart with strangers gawking at her most vulnerable body parts. She laughed again, imagining a sign hammered above her headboard written in big capital letters. To all, my womanhood is open for business. Although all imagery vanished in seconds, no choice of her own, for the pain returned, and so she pushed with all her might. Dr. Klaus, not paying much attention to Betsy's screaming fits, exclaimed, The baby is coming! I can see! I see the tip of the head! Keep pushing, Miss Lewin! Betsy's pores were seeping mineral sweats, just as she had sprinted at the Olympic Games. Holding on to her husband's hand for dear life, she thought to herself, Am I going to make it? Ambrosio saw movement underneath the drape that hung halfway down from his wife's waist. He couldn't resist. He peeked. He saw her bright pinkish thick lips, a dark bloody abyss, with an alien-looking creature coming out of her blonde sprouting pubic hair. Feeling queasy, he quickly went back near his wife's upper body, re-holding her hand. A little green-collared, funny-looking alien is probing your insides, Ambrosio told his wife. Now he looked mad. But Betsy ignored her husband and screamed some more. Unaffected, Dr. Klaus and Nurse Olga concentrated on the baby's head, nearing the opening of Betsy's gaping vagina that tore her apart all the way towards her anus. With a soothing voice, Nurse Olga spoke. I see some fuzzy hair coming towards us. You are so courageous, Betchy. Keep pushing. Betchy thrusted and pumped with all her might, with only one thought. Keep going. Soon you'll be a mother. Meanwhile, rain trashed outside and lightning stroked from the sky, appearing as if Zeus, the Greek god, coughed sparks of light, sending the whole of the hospital into darkness.
Just keep pushing, Miss Lewin,
Dr. Klaus replied.
Women have been giving birth for millions of years, squatting down in the mud with no technology nor help.
The head is out, exclaimed Nurse Olga while shining a flashlight towards Betchy's opening. Dr. Klaus gently held onto the neonate's head.
Shoulders are coming out. You are almost there. One more push.
Ambrosio's facial complexion regressed into a lighter hue as he watched his wife fighting for her life.
What is the sex?
Exclaimed Ambrosio.
It's a girl,
Dr. Klaus announced. Ambrosio sighed, yet relieved to have his wife back to sanity. He kissed his Betchy on the forehead, and then as the electricity kicked back in, Ambrosio perceived Dr. Klaus proudly holding the newborn, elongated body covered in a mucus substance. With a turn of the wrist, he flipped the mucus substance upside down, holding on with his left hand the minuscule ankles, and with his right palm spanked the virtual shriveled bum. The terrestrial creature let out a screech louder than the mother ever had. It gave a rawness to the atmosphere that propelled wavelengths of impulses across time. In that same instant, an electrical shock ran through the newborn, followed by an awareness of deliverance when it lied finally between its mother's breasts. No wonder we don't recall our birth. The shock is so intense, our mind locks it away in a secret vault and throws away the key forever to protect us from the agonizing pain of the first breath. So, with the first breath of oxygenated air, the baby inhales all of humanity, channeling through the newborn cries of sorrow, mortal beings suffering due to the cruelty they inflict on each other. Simultaneously, ovation ignites by other beings as they embrace the ups and downs life has to offer, transcending by all cultures around the world with a jolt that gave rise into the infant brain, electrical shock. He is alive. Nurse Olga clamped the twisted umbilical cord near the newborn's belly, and Dr. Klaus asked if the father would like to cut the cord. Ambrosio shook his head like a little boy. Dr. Klaus snipped the umbilical cord ceremoniously. And that is how this human being first started its journey in its physical world, out of the warm, secure womb and into the gravitational pull, where the body is no more suspended in fluid, but must fight for survival in a tempered world. A child born from a generation of permutation, yet lingering in the air, is a self-determination. 1970 had a significance for this baby, for it's the destiny of all babies born into this world to embark on a journey in which they must follow their intuition with the help of their quintessence to figure out what is their sole purpose in life. Betchy, inspired by the feminist movement of the 60s, in which she will fight all her life for independence, but will have a difficult time due to a lack of self-confidence, placed her hope within her daughter to achieve what she inspired but could never reach. And so Betchy gave her daughter the name of Sibylla, a woman prophetess who speaks of divine inspiration. "Would you like to hold your baby?" Nurse Olga asked Ambrosio.
No, leave the baby with her mother,
answered Ambrosio. Nurse Olga and Dr. Klaus exchanged strange looks. Exhausted, Betty does not pay much attention to her husband's dissatisfaction, since in her arms laid her little baby girl with her cone-shaped head and Asian-looking eyes. Betty smiles to herself, for she cannot stop staring at this beautiful terrestrial creature. The end.